report like a lot of you have already. And it's a lot of things that we already know. Some of it's our strengths, some of it's our weaknesses. I know Corey, Henry, and Irvin and I will be going through this report extensively next Thursday when we meet, and we'll see about parts of this, where we can come into play as a physical court, because a couple of the projects that we've got done, like the courthouse and the broadband project, we're sort of finishing up, and we need something else to do. I'll be honest with you, to try to make things better. And Chad, I hope, that you will lead the way with the city, you know what I'm saying, and carry this forward to them. And like I said, I think the rest of you, Ivan, Mary, we've got our economic development, Mark Welch on here with us. And we appreciate Elizabeth from the First Community Bank and all the rest of you. And we will disseminate this information out. And Miss Melissa Bond, we thank you for coming to Clinton and taking care of this and giving us the words that we need to hear. And a lot of it, really, to be honest with you, some of the things we've already started, because we actually can open our eyes and see them, but it always helps when we get a different viewpoint from someone else. So, Melissa, I'll turn it back to you. Then y'all can, again, thank each and every one of you tonight.
Well, I just want to give a little intro to Melissa Bond. She is with the Community and Economic Development Initiative of Kentucky, and Melissa joined CEDIK in March of 2015. Her expertise is in arts programming, farmers market, and her prior experience was as an extension agent in Kentucky CES, Cooperative Extension. She is currently a program leader for arts extension for the state, and she also is an extension specialist with CEDIK, and she is the person in charge of the First Impressions program and running that for CEDIK. And so we are glad to have her with us today. If you would like a copy of the report, I have put that a link to it on issue in chat. But if you would like this PDF emailed to you, you can email me at mgoodman@uky.edu, and I will get that report emailed to you. Here you go, Melissa.
Well, thank you, Melissa. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to get to join you all tonight. I've regretted that we couldn't do this in person and do this earlier in the year, because one of my favorite parts of this program is getting to come into your community and sharing some of this feedback with you and hear what you think about it. But I'm excited to get to do this over Zoom. And I understand that Melissa's put the link to the report in the chat box. So if you haven't seen it yet, you could click on there. I'll also be pulling out some key quotes throughout the report as I share my PowerPoint with you and as we walk through some of this information. What I'll have to do, I have satellite internet and it's a little moody. So when I share my screen for PowerPoint, I'm going to turn off my video to make sure that my feed stays connected throughout. So I'll get started right now. I'll share my screen. And if at any point you all have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat and one of your extension agents can interrupt me, or feel free to just ask me if you have anything that you need clarified. I'm happy to do it. Okay, let me scoot this over so it's not sharing all the video. Okay, is that sharing my PowerPoint and no longer all of your faces right now?
Yeah.
That looks great.
Okay, great. All right, so the first few things I want to share with you is just a little bit about the First Impressions project. You all worked with us to contract this project, but I want to give you some background so that you can answer questions as well as they come in. First Impressions, at the core of it, is a secret shopper program for communities. We work with your local community, whichever agency contracts with us, to send in secret shoppers over a certain window of time to visit and explore your community, drive all the way through, do the ins and outs. They read about you on the internet, and they just try to get to know everything about your community. And then they give their feedback of their experience and what their day was like. And a lot of times this program is really helpful because as we live in our own communities and work in our own communities, we are so familiar with everything that it's hard sometimes to dial back and look at it from a visitor's perspective, especially about directions, navigation, or locations that as a community, we might feel like, oh, that one, I know in my town, we have this one building right as you come into town, and the wall is halfway painted blue, and then they never finished it. And it's the biggest eyesore to most people that live here. But when our town wound up doing first impressions, nobody even noticed that. So it also helps you look at yourself sometimes in a more positive light because you are working day in and day out on those challenges, that it's nice to stop and get a reminder of some of the really great things y'all are doing. So overall, for the purpose of the program is that your visitors will give an unbiased, unique perspective for their impressions of your community. And this is an assessment tool at the heart of it. This was created in 1993 in Wisconsin, and it's been done in over 1,000 communities across the country since it was created. So the great thing about it is it already had decades of research behind it before it came to Kentucky 5 years ago. So this is more of a snapshot and an overview rather than an intensive, in-depth economic development analysis. But that snapshot can sometimes give you some really valuable feedback to work with. So my biggest advice is keep in mind that these are just individual people's opinions from a day or two that they happen to be in your community. If there's a couple of comments that maybe you disagree with or you take offense to, that's okay, and that's normal, and that's going to happen. But try not to throw out the whole report, because maybe you just have very different opinions than that one person, but the other people on your team wound up giving really good stuff. Or maybe it's an opportunity to look at why that comment bothers you, and if maybe there's a way to do something about it, or a way to just say, well, I disagree with that, but these other things are great. So you all had 6 visitors on your team throughout summer and fall of 2019. These were small business owners. You had a young family with teenager and preteen children, and marketing professionals to come and spend the day in your community and check it out. So how it works is the first thing we do is we just ask them to look up your town. We don't tell them, all right, so this community has a quilt trail, this community has a chicken festival. We don't tell them anything about your community because we want their planning to be as natural and organic as possible. Because a lot of times, that just driving by on the parkway or that quick Google is the only chance that visitors give your town to decide whether they're going to stop and spend money with you or keep on going and looking for another exit. So the very first thing we do is say, here's the name of the county, here's the major cities in it, go to town. Look up the information however you like. So some of our people, they use Google, and they prefer to get on social media and Facebook and Yelp reviews and all of those platforms to figure out what your web presence is. Other people, they enjoy calling a visitor's office or a visitor's bureau or a chamber or even a city hall and just calling and asking questions in order to get information. So it's really a variety of ways. So that web presence element, the majority of our reviewers use web search. Even if they like to call, they still get online and search. So we really like to share feedback with you about that. Then once they plan their trip, they do what's called the quick pass impression, which means they look at the map, they plan out their route, and they just drive into your community and then go through it without stopping. They'll go from one end to the other, go in and out of the towns a little bit and just explore. And then they stop and write down what's called their quick pass impression, or that knee-jerk reaction they get based on just driving through quickly. Then we have them do an in-depth exploration where they turn around and go back into town and they dive deep and they get out of their car, walk around, visit businesses, eat at a restaurant, stop in some stores, and just check everything out. And they write detailed impressions about that. Then we like to ask them, at the end of their visit, after they wait a little bit of time, we say, so now that you've had some time since you went there, what are your lasting impressions of that community? What is it that you'll remember 6 months or a year from now? and what are the positives and the strengths that they're really capitalizing on, and where are some opportunities for growth. And we have them share those with us. Then we compile the feedback from all of your different team members, and they never see each other's reports. They each do their own, so that it really is these unique individual perspectives. And then we create recommendations for you all based upon what we see that comes over and over as recurring themes throughout the comments. So through all of that, we'll also, if we have any questions, I'll contact the team members again to get some clarifying on some questions if I might have, where they say they were in this community, but no one else mentioned that item in that community, just so that I feel like I understand what they're saying. But overall, that's how we compile the reports. And we enjoy really letting them guide their experience and their comments. And throughout the report, for example, every single one of your team members mentioned the state park as a great location and a great asset. So you may not necessarily see that comment though repeated 6 times. If we have a comment that just happens over and over, we tend to condense that into one comment. So just because a comment's in this report, maybe only once, it could be that it showed up multiple times, enough to be in there. It's just for brevity so that your report doesn't wind up being about 40 pages long. So let's start with some of their feedback on your web presence. Now, this is not in the full report, this section, because web presence changes overnight. We can share this information with you, and you all could hop on this evening or tomorrow and make the changes. And we don't put it in there because we don't want to make your whole report outdated quickly by putting web presence in there. But if your office maintains the websites, or you have someone that does, we can send you directly those comments if you'd like, if there's anything that you want to really dive into. So for the web presence, and it looks like my screen share is a little bit off, so let me tighten that a little bit better. For the web presence, the majority of your people, when they Googled your community, they found explorehickmancounty.com. That was the most common one that came up, and it had really positive reviews. Here's a quote right here from someone. They said it was impressive and that the logo was charming. They liked that the photos were high quality and interesting, and they felt like there was good video there that they relied on. They felt like there was information on the page, but there was not there was an opportunity for a map or interactive information that could list about your historical sites or your bed and breakfast or restaurants or shopping or anything like that. They felt like there was more space available for that information to happen. A few of your other reviewers, but not nearly as many, wrote about some of the government sites and the city pages that you had. And they said overall the pages were well structured and that they were good pages with information. Mostly they looked like information for people that live in your community, for residents to look up. But that one opportunity is that there were several areas where there were just links that were broken. So there's a chance there to review some of those sites and click through all the links to make sure that there's taking you to a page that's recent, and that they found calendar events, but that the calendar of events seemed pretty outdated. So an opportunity there. And that could have been, remember, this was in fall of 2019. So we were a bit far out now from having that information. But the biggest thing for your web presence that came up repeatedly is that the review websites are really, really sparse. Most people, when they're traveling somewhere, or if they're on the parkway trying to decide where they're going to get off at an exit to do anything, or if they're just going through a community, the first thing they look up is good restaurants, Hickman County, and that'll bring up Yelp or TripAdvisor or these review websites, Google reviews as well. And there was just very, very little information. The few places that had reviews, there were maybe only 2 or 3 reviews on there. And so there's in a lot of businesses, when they went through the community and then they went back online because they said, I didn't see this online. I didn't see this place online. There were more businesses in town than I realized. It's because a lot of the businesses are not listed online. And we see this happen a lot in our rural towns that, for me personally, I know which restaurant in town's my favorite where I live. I don't need to get on Yelp reviews or Google reviews to read reviews to find out. I know that I like to go to this restaurant because they have great food, and I hate to go to that restaurant because they never cook their wings all the way. So a way that you all could quickly and very free help your community businesses is encouraging people to review local. And if there is a restaurant or there's a business that you frequent, if you go to the hardware store in town, hop online and write a review about them, because that's a quick and easy way to help your community. And quite frankly, if there's a business that has poor customer service or doesn't have quality products, sometimes a fair but honest review can help inspire that business to do better. So maybe providing there's an office called the Small Business Development Center that covers each region throughout the state. They have like 7 to 10 counties they cover, and they've started offering review website trainings for businesses. So that might be an opportunity to contact them and offer those in your community. So after they've done their web presence experience and explored everything, they came into your town. And so here's some things that stood out for them. We just asked them, you know, drive in from one area, what routes did you take, and drive through without stopping. So routes listed that people mentioned, they came in through Kentucky Highway 307, 123 South, 51 South to Clinton. They've left via Kentucky 123, Kentucky 575, and Kentucky 307 North. And they mentioned Highway 58 a few times as well. So they took a pretty decent variety of entrances and exits for your community. And overall, people said the road conditions seemed good throughout. They didn't feel like they didn't really run into any potholes or problems with the road. They felt like they were good, clear, and smooth. And between the cities, they were good roads. It was a pretty rural, scenic, kind of rolling hills and farmland area that they saw, and that it was an attractive area to drive through. They noted that there were welcome signs. They saw one comment was, we saw a pretty and welcoming sign. It had flowers and plants around it as well. And that the state park was very clearly marked and the signage there was good. That in Clinton, the signage was great to navigate. We easily found the schools, the museum, and the businesses, and that most of the town centers around that central courthouse area. So it was fairly easy to find town. Overall, that's a positive that people felt like the signage was good and easy to navigate. I've done this in 30 communities now across the state. And usually one of the bigger challenges community has is their signage, that they don't have things clearly marked and that it's hard to get around. And people even said, you know, that you all had pretty consistent signs for museums you had in the area, the Trail of Tears, the state parks. So that was a positive that you had good signs that were listed. They did note that town seemed empty. And this is a thing that I noticed too, the difference between visitors that go on a weekday versus a weekend. And a lot of times, if you're trying to capture that tourism overflow, it winds up being on a weekend. And they tend to have an experience where the town seemed more empty to those people that came in on a Saturday because more locations were closed. The next category we look at is called livability. And a lot of people wonder, well, why do you do that when you're focusing on just visitors? But we believe one of the principles of community economic development is that there's 7 major areas called community capitals that are really critical to a community's health and vibrancy and development. You know, your community can be outstanding on having, you know, great houses, but if the school may not be a strong school, then people may not want to relocate there or return with their families. So it's important that you have this great mix. So we like to look at livability in the areas of housing, healthcare, and schools, also to give you more feedback on what visitors think when they're researching your community from the lens of a family who may be wanting to move there or a family that would want to move back. So housing, this area was really a wide spectrum. You had people noting that there were some really nice neighborhoods and nice subdivisions with well-manicured lawns and flowers. And then you had people noting that there were areas that were not as well maintained. And it seemed to just be across the spectrum, which we see this a lot, you know, in most communities. That's a realistic snapshot of what housing may be. You have neighborhoods where they almost try to outdo each other on decorations every year. And then you have other neighborhoods where it doesn't feel quite as well maintained. And then for healthcare, a lot of your reviewers listed this area as an asset. They felt like for the size of your community, that they felt like there were good healthcare assets there. You had the care clinic, intermediate health, the health department, nursing facilities. So that ranked pretty high in accessibility to healthcare. And then your schools ranked really high for your visitors. They felt like the school grounds were in good condition. They seemed very well maintained. And that when they looked them up online, your schools even recently received an excellent award, and that was a good indicator to them. And they appreciated the investment in schools there. One quote specifically was that the schools in Clinton were newer or renovated brick facilities that were easily identified and well maintained. It seems as if the community invests in the education. The ball field and grounds also look new and well maintained. And just repeatedly, I saw a lot of really good comments about how nice the school system seemed to be, and that investment in the community was strong. For tourism, we have them look at whether it was easy to find a tourism center, and whether signs were were easy to read and easy to navigate, and what kind of amenities are there that would draw people. What is it they see as your target demographic or your primary audience that would come and spend outside dollars in your community? So this was interesting to me because I had some people say that they saw a tourism building right downtown. They saw a visitor center on the court square, and that they had good signage and it was easy to see. And then someone else said, I didn't see a visitor center at all. And then when I looked up the chamber, they only had a PO box, so I assumed there was not a physical location. So I think that just really varied depending on individuals being observant, because more of yours stated that they noticed either museums that seemed to have visitors information, especially the state park seemed to be your primary draw and such a big asset, and that it was well stocked with regional flyers, the Civil War days information, and trail maps. And so that if people are coming and visiting your state park, they're getting a good glimpse of what's going on in your community. The Great River Road designation had really high reviews for the signage and the information there. It was attractive and it was easy to read. For the Trail of Tears signage, we had a team that said once they started following the sign, they got very confused because it seemed like the signs were pointing at each other, and they were trying to follow back and forth. So maybe more of a map or some kind of other information there could be more beneficial for them to be able to follow. But they felt like there were several historical markers throughout the county, and it appears that someone at some point in your community really did a lot of research and secured a lot of those historical markers for locations that were significant, and that was noticeable for them. And that they feel like tourism primarily, your primary demographic, would be the people that are interested in those areas of our country's history. And those are the people you likely bring in the most, and that would come to visit the most. One quote was that someone said there were several chickens and roosters of various sizes seen all around town, and that someone told them that was related to the chicken festival, and that they said that it seems as if the town was working hard to make lots of preparations for the big Civil War reenactment that was coming up that weekend, and that seemed to be a popular draw. For the next category, we look at infrastructure. And this really just means kind of what are the bones? What is the built environment of the community? And what are the strong features that you all have worked on? And what are opportunities? So the biggest thing, everyone said there was plenty of parking everywhere. They didn't feel like they had any trouble parking in town. They liked that the parking was free. It was easy to park, walk wherever they wanted, and walk around that courthouse square. And that Clinton downtown had some renovated buildings that looked like they could tell there had been recent investment in spaces, and that some of them had been renovated, but that there were still some that stood out because the level of disrepair they had was significant, whether it was roofs crumbling or just some pretty significant decay there. But that street names were well marked, they felt like, and that it was really an easy way to navigate in town. They felt like in Columbus, it was such a smaller town that there just didn't seem to be much available building stock. What there is the city hall, post office, the diner, grocery store, and that really seemed to be town for that area. They felt like there's opportunities for some of the empty lots in Clinton that they could be used maybe for pop-up parks or even some pop-up landscaping, just to make those vacant spaces more interesting and attractive. That seemed to be a refrain that I noticed. And they did mention parks, but those were mentioned a lot more in the next section. So I'm going to save that for just a second. They mentioned that several historic buildings had been appeared to be well maintained. So it was nice that you all focused on and tried to restore and maintain some of your significant historic locations. For government and public services, they noted that there was good marketing and logo consistency throughout the county offices, that the logo that was on the website was also in front of the judge executive's office. And that was a nice touch for being consistent and highlighting that. They several mentioned it's the farmers market pavilion with the Rotary Park nearby, and that the farmers market pavilion was a really nice investment, that the property looked good, and that seemed like a really nice venue for the community. Several noted that there were certain areas of the town where it seemed like sidewalks had recently been worked on and that they were in good condition, but that there were other areas that were in disrepair, and that they almost seemed hazardous the way they were crumbling. And so one opportunity there would be just to do a sidewalk inventory, where you can sometimes really even engage youth in this project. And we have a template for it if you'd be interested, but it's encouraging you to go out walking in your community. And some people take a stroller and see how they can navigate on those sidewalks, and other people just walk and make notes of that to identify areas that are opportunities. And the courthouse overall, they said it was well landscaped, it was attractive, and that all of the little museums were well maintained that had been restored, and that they were attractive as well. There was some confusion about the library, because it said Clinton Women's Club. And so that team particularly said, you know, we assumed that the club raised the money or sponsored it, or maybe they meet there, but we weren't really sure because it was really, really big at the top of the library that it was the Clinton Women's Club library. And they found that interesting. But that overall, your services, your public services seem to be in good shape, and that there has been community investment there. For arts and culture, this area is honestly the area where most communities don't score well. They tend not to be able to portray their own identity. And you all had really, really positive comments in this area. It seems like there's been real investment in identifying what's the historical aspects of our community, and then how can we figure out a way to showcase that and portray that. People felt like overall, once they were in your community, your identity was rich and there was information everywhere. They felt like the murals were strong, and that there were nice murals throughout town, and that there was a variety of different art options to see, and they thought that was good. And then the parks came up yet again, that the parks are one of your biggest assets throughout your county, and that those are really strong, and that they appreciated the investment there. A lot of teams found the quilt trail to be really interesting, and you actually had two teams who had never heard of the organized quilt trail barn quilt idea before, and they really enjoyed it and said, you know, there's more opportunity here, that they've got these quilt squares out, and there could be potential to tie this out throughout more and to continue on with this and expand it. All of your teams mentioned there's these beautiful churches with beautiful stained glass windows, and that they think those stained glass windows are such an asset, and if there's any way to preserve those, even if the buildings are beyond repair, that's something really unique and interesting that you all have, that other communities don't have those things. So culturally, they felt like you were rich, you were confident in your identity, and that you were showcasing it well. And I thought that was really nice feedback to hear. For lodging, restaurants, and retail, there weren't a lot of options that came up, but the ones that did were referenced. The Beehive Cafe had a lot of traffic when they went by, and that was very popular. One of your teams mentioned that they didn't notice immediately that it was a restaurant. There was a lot of vehicles, and it was, once they went back and looked, they noticed there is signage there. It just wasn't easily noticeable from the road. And that could be in your local community. Everyone just knows where it is and everyone goes to it. And the opportunity to add some paint to the space might really draw some attention and make it unique. And that the Country Cafe was a great stop for lunch. The staff was friendly, they were attentive, they said the atmosphere was nice, it was a good price, and that people were really friendly inside and were willing to chat, and they liked that. Bella's Boutique had a lot of good favorable comments, and that they had a friendly and helpful owner. You had several teams that visited that location and enjoyed their stop, and they liked the energy that space was bringing into the town as well. The lodging, there were less lodging options. Teams did look up and see that there were Airbnb options, and that's great that there's locations listed on Airbnb, but they were just out of the price range of these visitors, and so they had a hard time with that. They wound up opting to stay in a different county for their lodging due to that. And that they did see that the Iron Banks Lodge was nice, but there wasn't any pricing available online anywhere, so you couldn't just see how much it might cost. And that was a detriment, because a lot of people, if the price isn't listed, they tend to assume that it's out of their range, because why wouldn't it be listed unless it's more money than I can afford? So that's an opportunity there to just list that pricing if they have vacancies. And that AC's was a good stop. There was something for everyone. They said it was a gas station, but it also seemed to have sandwiches, and that everyone was friendly there, and that it seemed to be a nice location to stop. And the refrain throughout all of these areas is that the people in your community are a really strong asset. No one really had any negative encounters or rude encounters. They felt like people were friendly, they were helpful, they wanted to talk to the visitors, they wanted to point them in the right direction and help them out, and that was appreciated. And I will say too, that is also not always the case. So that's a big asset for you all. So the next thing we say is, what are those lasting impressions? Like, what are the positive things you've observed about this community that when you think back, or if you know somebody might be traveling through, what will you recommend to them to see? And one of the strongest assets that you all had is that strong connection to history. You all know your history, you know your story, and you promote it well. They said that public art was a really strong option. Even that there was a building that it kind of seemed like it was boarded up, but you all had painted on the boarded up space to make it more interesting and attractive. And that was an asset, and that was a plus. That the school system is really strong, and that would be attractive for families, and to have confidence that you have a good quality school system and you're investing in your youth. And then the Columbus Belmont Park, everyone that went there, just said that they were blown away by how pretty it was, and that it was really relaxing and beautiful. And they think that that's almost too well kept of a secret, and that could really be celebrated more, because it was a nice location. It was really interesting and attractive. And one of your teams specifically mentioned opportunities for more public art at that location as well, to bring in more traffic. And what are just ways to drive people to that park? So then some of the challenges they identified were, while there are many buildings in disrepair, that's common throughout communities, there's also buildings that just need a good cleaning. And that is something, even if maybe you can't increase the vacancy rate, or you can't fix the building that's going to cost $1 million to fix, what about this building that maybe just needs a really good pressure wash and a good window clean and maybe a new coat of paint or two? To really brighten it up and liven it up. One of the biggest challenges is that the web presence is so limited, that those review sites are not populated, that it seems like your business owners are not really on platforms as much, and that they could really benefit from that media presence. And that one team commented that they just felt overall through the some of the neighborhoods and some of the experiences they had, that there seemed to just be a lack of community pride. It kind of gives this impression that you've got a core team that's doing a lot and really loves the community, but what does the average resident feel? And is there that level of investment, and how can that improve, and how can that increase? Someone else mentioned there's so much information about history that they couldn't get a sense of what your goals are moving forward. And is it that you're so focused in the past that what's your identity that you want to become, and how do you want to move forward with momentum, and are there opportunities to do that? And then another challenge is, you know, there may not be enough activities for someone to come and spend a full weekend or a full week, but there's enough in your community that people felt like they really filled their time with interesting activities and that they had plenty to do. And so there's an opportunity there to work regionally with maybe 1 or 2 neighboring counties. And those tourism agencies, you all work together to draw up what is an itinerary to spend 48 or 72 hours in our region of the state. What would you do? Where could you stay? What could you, where could you go? And make that itinerary preloaded so that people don't have to do all the digging and research. They can just pull that up in your tri-county cluster and say, oh, wow, look at all that there is to go through there. We better swing by and check it out. So overall, from all of that information, we compile all of it. And the recommendations, we really try to create recommendations that are not going to be, you know, spend $10 million on a long range plan, but what are recommendations that you all could organize around quickly? And some of these may be 5-year plans and 10-year plans, but what are these immediate things as well that you could do? And that web development support for small businesses could be a really great first step of encouraging that local review campaign online, and encourage your businesses to get online and learn more about web presence and the value of that. And especially in our current challenges we've seen over the past 6 or 8 months, that web presence is critical for a business's survival. So how can they be supported there? Also recognizing your history, recognizing all the amenities you have. It seems like you know what those are really well, which is great. You're not having to mine for amenities and culture and ideas, but how can you recognize that history and then also look forward, and what are your future goals and ideas in your projects in the community that you could build on as well, and how can you convey that to visitors? And then organizing that downtown or building cleanup days. And I understand communities you can clean it up today and then somebody will litter again tomorrow. That's just a fact that we deal with. But what are opportunities maybe to find ways to get your average resident involved and invested and volunteering and coming out downtown to help clean up? And one of the biggest challenges I hear from a lot of communities is that, well, that building's just, you know, sitting there crumbling, but the owner lives out of town and they've not even set foot in town for 25 years and they just don't care or take care of it. And sometimes it helps if we just, like, instead of trying to hold the owner accountable, if you can't do it through policies or cleanup processes that way, maybe sometimes just organizing youth to offer to go wash buildings for free and storefronts for free. And even if that owner's absent and they're not being involved, if you can at least get it cleaned up or find incentives to get a coat of paint on there, that can really improve the overall community and the civic pride there. And those are all opportunities that we identified as ways to move forward. So I understand that's me talking a lot and that's a lot of information. And this was really just the summary, and you'll have time to really dive into the report in the comments. But one of the most common things I do hear across the state is people saying, yeah, this actually does line up with what we see and what we've been saying, but seeing that it's what anonymous visitors also experience, that's an opportunity to give us momentum to go forward. And as well, just sometimes the things visitors say may be something that you know that you guys have worked on for years and you've overcome so far and you're so proud of that look. So consider this as a reflection that you're on the right track. If you've been working hard on these areas and they also noticed them, then that should be great encouragement that your vision has been accurate and that you've been moving forward. That's all of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions that you all might have. And I'll turn my video back on and stop my screen share.
It all looks very accurate to me. You know, we live here every day and we see it, but it looks very accurate. So, and we thank you for coming, and we thank you for the other people coming. And hey, we've taken a good bit of steps on some of these things, and we'll do more, I promise you.
The areas that really, I'll just tell you, that stood out to me as having done this for 5 years and over almost a third of the state now, is how strong you all were in the community parks area. One, that seemed like a really great investment, and the public art and culture area was really strong. And I thought that was really nice to see that it feels like you do have really engaged people that have done the work and done the research and are organizing together. And that's really important and really valuable. And so I love reading all of these positive comments about those areas. Does anyone have any other questions?
I have some comments, but I'm not sure how we proceed at this point. I have quite a few details to give back to you. Is that all right?
Yeah.
I'm part of a historical society here, and because of the pandemic crisis and everything shut down, we're exploring how to do the next age tourism and cultural heritage. Normally, we engage about 300 people a year through our meetings and dinners and presentations. Well, we can't do that anymore. So here's what we're exploring. We have about 1,000 years of history in this county. We have 287 points that we can talk about. That is not Civil War, it's beyond and past that. We are exploring how to do a trail around churches and faith from Columbus over to Cadiz in Trigg County. We're looking at possibility of art, cultural, and trails as well. We have quite a few artists and writers in this area, more than most counties. With the collapse of the Tourism Society for Kentucky, i.e. the bourbon trails are going down. Every known trail we had before this is going to be struggling to come back. From the research we gained, about 40% of all the retail establishments may not make it back. So that's project number one, is to build a new tourism, cultural, long-range plan. Project number two is what I'm doing with some other people outside the county. We're going to look at the impact of climate on Clinton for the past 10 years, the present situation, and go 10 years in the future. For example, in the past 10 years, we lost 14 buildings around town. There are 87 lots or retail spots around the courthouse square. Right now, it's about 48% are vacant. A lot of that has to do with weather and climate and the business community that is shortage of money. And what we feel really confident about right now, what we're hearing is that with the new administration coming in, this will probably affect you guys as well, a lot of money is going to be put out for community development. We're looking at a possibility of a plan. Kenny, you might know this, the 701 plan through HUD, Comprehensive Planning Plan. What is being developed is a community sustainability comprehensive plan. That way, climate change is never mentioned, but it will be the same process of detailed planning to bring a town up to world standards right now. Along with that is a plan to reach out to the climate refugees of the South. What we're hearing is going to be over the next 10 years, 2 million people are going to vacate the Gulf area. They're already locating in Tennessee and northern Alabama. So we're trying to pull them into this area, at least some of them. The other thing we're looking at is trying to work with a new transition team, the president, on a concept called Community Infrastructure Core. In our history, we have the OCC camps, FDR, very strong, built apart. So we're looking at what you said, organized structure. We take volunteers or paid people who are coming out of jail, who have no job skills, teach them how to do restructuring here in town, helping people build back. There's also a plan being developed of the 9 squares around the courthouse. 3 of them are being targeted to have a total new look in the next 3 years. So we attract people from Chicago, Nashville, and Cape. And in that process, that's a new high-tech corridor being shaped right now. If you look at what's going on in Clarksville, Tennessee, Nashville, and Cape, it's coming our way. It's all around us. So if we get in a list, high-tech infrastructure, high-tech entrepreneurship, then it'll help put us on the map. I say all this because the recovery plan for next year, it's going to be very intense and very large, and we have a good handle on that. This town is well poised geography because one of the things you mentioned, we have a best established courthouse square in 8 counties. Question now is how we build upon that for the next decade. With that, I'll shut up.
Melissa, I would agree. A lot of the high points that you hit on is things that we see daily here as community members. Thank you so much for taking the time to present to us. We've got a lot of key stakeholders in our community on this call. And I know that they will take those back to their committees and positions that they serve on and do good things with it.
One thing I'd like to mention is we're currently not doing in-person travel, but in the future, if that is reinstated or when that's reinstated, we do have a landscape architecture specialist in our department who has done some work in helping imagine some of those vacant spaces, specifically in small towns that are around a courthouse square. And so I could link you all with him. And he's also been able, they've been trying to do some pretty creative things using some of our interns just using aerial maps, or even if sometimes somebody will go out and just get a good film footage of the area to look at and give you all some quick, easy suggestions that could be opportunities there. So extension agents, I'm happy to work with you all through that, or if that sounds something that would be interesting to you, we can introduce you to them, because that I've seen that give a good next step for communities that maybe you may not have the money to do an intensive planning process, but that's a fun resource to look at.
That sounds great. We'll talk with everybody and look into that. I know those are really good resources that we haven't tapped into that the university has. Okay, well, is there any more questions or anything while we have Melissa on? All right, I won't prolong
Melissa,
it. Thank you, Melissa.
can you hear
Yes,
me?
yes,
It's Gay.
yes, we can hear you.
I had a comment about Iron Banks Lodge. I managed Iron Banks Lodge, and I don't know if at that time the prices weren't on the website, but they definitely are now. So that's a step in the right direction.
Okay, yes, definitely.
And I think there is work that we can do in helping people understand the importance of reviewing local businesses. That's also something fairly easy and for free that we can do. And we could even start that, in the next couple of weeks, and showing people what websites they could go to and how to do that. So me and Matea can work on a video on that and kind of get that started by showing them how to review a local business, and then see if we can get resources from SBD or some kind of training if business owners would hop on that. So that's good too.
Thank you all. I appreciate you taking the time to let me present. And if you have any other questions, your extension agents know how to get a hold of me. So I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right, guys, we're going to end this meeting. Anybody else? Last thoughts?
Melissa,
Okay.
Melissa,
Yeah.
do you
Yes.
do you have documentation of the meeting?
Yeah,
Like a transcript?
we have recorded it, And so we will be getting that recording to Kenny for him to post on the website. We'll probably also post on our Hickman County Extension YouTube page, and so I can share that link with you. Additionally, if you will look down on the chat box, I did a link to the report, but Gay, I have your email address so I can send you the report. So
Okay.
you'll have it. I'll send that as soon as we get off tonight.
Okay, I came on late. I apologize. It's been interesting. What I've
No.
heard, it's great.
Yeah, no, the report is even more in detail. So if you all are on, like I said, if you want that report, I'm sure Kenny will send it out to the magistrates. I will send it out to email addresses that I have for the Chamber of Commerce of people that I think are interested. I may not just send out randomly to everyone, but people that I think could really benefit from the material. Me or Matea will get that sent out. All right, we're 9 minutes from a 1 hour meeting. So we're going to see you guys later. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.